Hey, everybody. Cooper, I want to start with you. Where did the idea for this come from?
The idea for Hal Harper came my sophomore year of college, actually. I had what I thought was a really funny idea about two little kids growing up too fast, and my college girlfriend and I played siblings in a web series called Hal and Harper. And it was us sitting in our twin beds in my college dorm room talking about all the things that our dad had said throughout the day that made us grow up too fast. And no one thought it was funny. It was just me who thought it was funny. And after making like a few episodes of this web series, I was like, what if I explored the adults playing these kids in their present? And then out came Hal and Harper, and it was like 6 years of writing, and it was mostly just for me for a while, and then I showed it to some people, and at some point I wrote an actual TV show for an audience, and it became something entirely different. It became what it is, but yeah, the seed and the genesis of the idea was just two kids growing up too fast.
When's the last time you watched the web series?
7 years. I haven't watched it since college. I don't even know how old I was probably 9 years ago, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've made this is a real rarity in television. You made this independently outside of the normal system. Tell me about the journey to getting this.
It's really easy. It was extremely hard. The independent TV doesn't exist for a lot of reasons, but I thought that if we made a great show, it could exist. Wrong. It was we made the whole show by ourselves for such a little amount of money that we thought streamers would kill to buy something for this cheap and put it on their thing, but it's just not how they operate. And luckily MUBI came in and saved us from not putting it on YouTube. and they've been so great, and we're so happy that the show's finally coming out.
I mean, like, did you take meetings, or was it literally
it wasn't
just a flat
hard
no?
It wasn't hard to finance the show at all.
Yeah.
It was really easy to finance the show because it was so cheap, and everyone thought I did a good job pitching indie TV should be a thing, and everyone was like, yeah, it should. And then we made it, and we went out to all these streamers, and they were like, we won't watch this because it's just not, they don't have people, they have not created departments like they have for independent movies, and they don't have people feeling empowered to say, I love that independent TV show and I want it to live at Netflix or wherever.
So basically, you would be setting a dangerous precedent for them.
Yes, and hopefully that's our hope, is that the show does well so that these places have to start hiring people and creating new jobs for indie TV.
You said you made it really cheaply. Like, how big was the crew on a given day?
I don't know those answers.
I feel like it was like 30.
30.
Okay, and Lily, when you did Riverdale, there would be like 80 to 100, right?
A very different ball game, yeah. Yeah.
So, like, when you're doing it on a shoestring, are there things that you guys have to wind up doing yourselves that you ordinarily wouldn't in a bigger process?
Well, yes.
I wouldn't know.
Well, you were wearing 18 hats while you were like.
Everyone's like, why are you wearing so many hats? It's gonna fall off.
But I mean, at some point, Addison, who plays Audrey, was like very much supervising the costuming of like our continuity, and she should not have had to do that, but that's sort of what ended up happening. Yeah, it was a lot of, I mean, we shot, at the time it was 10 episodes and now it's 8, but we did not film in order. And so how many different looks and costumes and what are they called? Like just days, actual days in the show, that is like hundreds of pieces of costumes, and you wouldn't think that that would be so hard to figure out, but it was really.
It's really hard.
When it became, actually, we had some continuity issues in one episode. Jesse leaves the house in one outfit and comes in another, and we just
Won't notice.
no one will notice.
But we were all devastated on the day because it was such an emotional scene, and Lili had given this amazing performance, and then Addison came in and was like, "She's supposed to be wearing a plaid shirt," and we were like, "No, they won't notice. They won't notice." And I actually don't think that they.
I mean, you do like a web series episode, which is just about what she was up to when she left the house. She got some chili spilled on her.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yeah.
this is all fixable.
Yeah.
All right. So 18 hats. How many different jobs do you feel you actually wound up doing over the course of this?
I mean, it was all written, so that didn't feel like a job I was doing on set. I didn't have that many hats. I was directing and I was acting in all the scenes that Hal is in. It wasn't that. It was about like half of the scene.
But in post, Cooper did edit the whole thing.
But that's post. It's, yeah.
But it's a lot. You did wear a lot of hats.
I wear a lot of hats. But the hardest thing about making it so cheap was we would do a scene from the pilot and a scene from the finale back to back, like, because we had to block shoot. And that's, TV shows shoot one episode and then another episode, and they don't block shoot like indie movies, but we had to do that with our budget. And it was really, Lili was great about it, but like Mark, bless his heart, is an older man, and he's like, Cooper, why the fuck are we, man? And like so many times he just really had to be situated in the scene, and I understood. It was like it's extremely hard to jump that far in the journey because it was over 300 pages, and the whole show is 4.5 hours, and we shot it like a movie, so it was extremely, I think, hard for everyone.
All right, so Lili, tell me about what that was like for you. You're shooting scenes from episode 1, episode 5. I assume it's like all the, you know, when you're in school, when you're in this place, when you're in that place, block shooting. What was it like having to keep track of Harper's emotional journey going that far out of order?
I mean, I could rely on Cooper he knew the script better than anyone, having written it, obviously, but I could always touch base with him and ask him where I was if I needed to. But I did also break Harper into two a little bit. It was young Harper and then old Harper, and having the two arcs and knowing what those two arcs was separate from each other was pretty helpful. I was able to figure it out. But
Mark should have done that. Yeah, he didn't.
But the two timelines actually really helped me, I think, in terms of knowing where I was. If it was just playing, 4.5 hours of one character in a linear timeline, I think it would have been actually a lot more challenging. So to have the two separate I looked at them as two separate characters, that was actually helpful.
No, I don't want to spoil things for the audience, but there's a period in the season when Harper has bangs. Was that helpful, the bangs period for...
Do you remember, we actually had a conversation about this when we were like, wait, how long did the bangs stick around? Because we
shouldn't talk about it, yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, they're supposed to look terrible, but they're like, clip-on bangs, and
they look great. You look great.
They're really bad. But we were like, okay, after one episode, we're gonna... Her hair grows really fast.
There was one scene that we had to reshoot because everyone forgot that you're supposed to have bangs in the scene, and some idiot was like, "Can't we just VFX it in post?" Like, her bangs. What budget do you think we have, man? So we had to reshoot that.
Lili, what is Cooper like as a director?
I really found it to be a very special experience to have a scene partner who wrote everything that I was saying and was directing me, because it just felt very intimate. Like, we got to get to know each other for a year before we shot, and that was also incredibly helpful in building, we have to show up on set and act like we've known each other for 22 years of life as siblings. So, I mean, Cooper created a very intimate and safe space on set, and also it being such a small crew, it really felt like I just had access to him. And sometimes with other directors, you barely see them or talk to them throughout the day. They come in, they give you a note, they go back behind their chair, behind a screen, and sometimes you just don't have that interaction. But with him, I mean, I saw you all day long, every day, and was talking to you and touching base with you, and that was actually a special experience. I've realized in hindsight how rare that is, having worked with other directors where sometimes you kind of go like a whole day, like, yes, you say you're whatever, and they give you notes, but you're not actually having a conversation. So it was really special to actually have that.
Cooper, I'm always fascinated when directors act in their own projects. How do you know when, like, your performance is working?
Oh, you don't. But I think that you actually, you do. Like, in the same way that, like, Lili, in our scenes together, we both know what's working. And you just have to, the moment that I act like a director, everything falls apart. But the moment, like, if I just look at every scene in the same way that Lili's looking at every scene, like, is this feeling right? And is it feeling what it needs to be? I always have this, like, big, huge packet of, like, 3 things that each scene needs to give the audience. And those are pretty easy to, like, check off. And then after that, it's like, is the scene feeling authentic, and is it feeling dangerous, and is it feeling funny in the right ways, and is it given all the emotional content that it needs? And I feel like it's more teamwork than me, like, calling cut and then thinking about, how was that? How can it be better? It was more just, we knew when we knew.
But you would look to us as well. You trusted us. Like, It
Yes.
was a very trusting environment, and so he would look at me and be like, was that good? And
I mean, were there times where he just didn't have it in a take and you told him?
I feel like if that happened, I would go, let's do it again. Yeah. But it would be like a mutual agreement that, okay, we could both actually do something different, or it was never like, that was a shitty take, let's do it again.
Yeah. Now, did you two meet because of this, or did you already know each other?
Because of this, my manager had called me and said, I want to set up a general with Cooper. You should watch his movies. And I did, and we met in LA as a general meeting.
I called your manager, you know that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and
Out of the blue, she was like, I think we should do a general with this. I, like, called her and I was like, can I meet your client, Lili? And she's like, yeah.
And we met, and you gave me he didn't tell me about the fact that I'd be playing a 9-year-old version of myself. You kept that hidden for some reason. I don't know why. You were like,
I didn't want you to be like, the fuck?
no, I would have.
All right, this guy's creepy, Dara.
But no, and we had our meeting, and then you sent me just the pilot to see how I liked it. And in the pilot, they're not the kid versions yet. But then he finally sent me the 300-page PDF, which I read pretty much all in one go, and in all caps. In the episode where they're kids, it says, the actors playing Hal and Harper will be the same actors playing young Hal and Harper. And that was sort of just this device that Cooper said he was alluding to in our first meeting. He was like, well, there's like this way of storytelling that I'm thinking about, and you'll read it, but I had no idea what it was. And it just so happened to be playing a small child.
Now, was this an exciting challenge, or was this okay?
No, it was very exciting. Like it wasn't intimidating at all. It was exciting, and sort of like a once in a lifetime. When would I get the opportunity to do that ever again? And I also thought it was incredibly just creative. I know we've seen that in Pen 15. At the time, I don't think I was familiar with Pen 15. This is obviously a very different tone, but I thought just the concept of it was very unique storytelling, obviously. So I was excited as an actor, yeah.
Now, the core relationship of the show is, as the title says, it's Hal and Harper, but as we meet the characters, they have other relationships going on. So for instance, when we first meet Harper, she is in the middle of a serious relationship, which we're gonna see a little bit of in clip number 1. So it's a healthy relationship between brother and sister. Lili, talk to me a little bit about like what you found interesting about the relationship between Harper and Jesse.
I mean, we're coming at them in 6 years, so they've been together for 6 years, and they're both collectively trying to make a relationship work that I think they're both aware is that they're at the tail end of, and but they're both so desperate to make it work out of how scared they are to change anything. I mean, they share a home, they share a life, And the idea of leaving that behind to grow is like Harper's worst nightmare. So, I mean, you see throughout some of the course of the show them desperately trying to fit together even when you know and they know what's best for them, which should be to like appreciate it for what it was and move on. But they can't. And Harper's also... she's at this point in her life where she spent most of her childhood and adult life taking care of everyone around her, taking care of her dad, who's emotionally absent, and taking care of her brother as a mother figure. And at this point, she finds herself in a relationship where she's also the caretaker, and Harper has a coworker that she starts to have feelings for, and her coworker is a mother and a caretaker, and I think Harper becomes extremely drawn to that, just as someone who's people pleased her whole life, and kind of realizing what her life could be like if she could be taken care of versus the other way around. And so she starts to lean out of her relationship and into a new one. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the physicality of playing young Hal and young Harper and how each of you chose to approach it. Let's start with you, Cooper.
I don't know. I just feel like I was like locked in. I feel like when we were playing our kid selves, I was never thinking of like, how does a 7-year-old walk or talk or run? There was one time where I'm running, and I remember right before a take watching, because we were surrounded by kids, and I was watching a kid just be a doofus running, and I was like, I'm gonna try that. And it was so, everyone was like, you really looked like a 7-year-old. I was like, I just watched one run. But I don't know, I feel like, and I feel like Lili might say this too, it was just, when we'd call action, it didn't feel like I was trying to act like a 7-year-old. It just was like what adult Hal needed to go back and experience. And it was like a different realm. It wasn't like, should I talk like this or should I talk like that, or should I walk like this or walk like that? It was more just, I want to go back and see what I need to see. And that's very specific.
Lili?
I think I've said I am awkward around children in my life, so I was having to work with actual 9-year-olds, which made me uncomfortable. But it worked, and it actually helped me. And I said, thank God young Harper wasn't this like popular socialite, because I would have no idea how to talk to these children. So the fact that Harper really feels like sort of alienated and doesn't fit in with her peers and is like wise beyond her years because she's had to grow up so fast. I felt like the sore thumb in the room, and I was. So I think the physicality of feeling uncomfortable in my environment ultimately actually really helped me look uncomfortable, because I was.
And the kids were really unruly. So like in the middle of takes, they, like in scenes with Lili, one of them would just go, why are you so big? Because they didn't understand, obviously, this like the metaphor of the show, and you can't explain it to them. So they're like so confused why we're acting like 7-year-olds and 9-year-olds, and they have to just pretend like, they're like, and we're just gonna pretend like this isn't crazy? And I'm like, yes, just do your job. And they're like, job? I'm 9.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. They were hard to direct.
I mean, you get into these scenes where like Hal is talking to the other kids in the class about like, can I join your basketball team? Can I go on your camping trip or whatever? And like you're having to engage with them a lot more than Lili does.
Yes,
so.
Hal desperately wants to be friends with all of the people in his class, and it was really funny. Our casting director, David Rubin, who's a genius, likes to send select tapes. And so he would send me all these tapes for like 7-year-olds that were very good actors. And at some point I was like, and I looked at the ages, and they were all like 7 or 8, and the characters in Hal's class would be 6 or 7. So I was like, can we look at some 6-year-olds? And he was like, well, 6-year-olds sent some tapes, but to be honest, they were all duds. Like they didn't know their lines really. They're not very interesting on camera. They like seemed like they wanted to be doing something else. And I was like, send me those tapes. And I watched them, and I was like, that's the show. The show is like Hal trying to be friends with someone who is so entirely out to lunch and not in the same realm that Hal's in, where he's like constantly scanning, constantly trying to take care of this like person who he wants to be friends with and go to Six Flags with, while meanwhile the kid is only thinking about one roller coaster at Six Flags. I'm like kind of spoiling the show, but there's a funny scene with a kid. But it was better that the kids were real kids and not these trained actors who somehow got training before the age of 7. So we tried to cast like real kids who didn't really know what was happening, and it worked out.
In terms of the sibling relationship, was there any relationship in your own life that you were drawing on, either in the writing or the playing of it?
Next question. No, of course, yeah. Actually, Hal and Harper and Dad, they really did come out of thin air, and there's no one in my life at all like Harper or Hal or Dad. I don't think. But the relationships that Harper had with people outside of the family, the relationships that Dad has and Hal has outside of the family, those are very much drawn from my life and my relationships.
So we've been talking about Dad a little bit. You mentioned Mark Ruffalo before. I think it's time for the people to see a little bit of Mr. Ruffalo in action. Let's play clip 2. Tell me what he was like to work with, just in that scene, for instance, Lili.
Well, that scene was interesting because it was the only scene where Cooper was in it but couldn't be watching it because he was on my lap asleep. You did fall asleep once. You did. Because I remember you waking up and rubbing your eyes and be like, was it good? But I mean, Mark is every bit as incredible as you would imagine him to be. He has no ego and just absolutely gives you space as a performer next to you. And we shot that scene it's a little bit longer, but we were sitting on that couch for like 5 hours, and the man can just access his emotions so easily. They're just like sitting right there, and because he's such a empathetic, loving person. And what a dream for me, to work with someone like him I've been watching since I was a kid and deeply admire. And so I'm like sitting there on the couch watching tears roll down his face, and it's just like I'm an audience member for a second and have to snap into being his daughter. But ultimately it was just, he's incredible and very giving and very present. Like he's not checking his phone in between takes. He's just like there in his body and really trying to be present for everyone else on set.
Cooper, tell me what it's like to direct one of the best actors alive.
It was great directing Lili. When I first met Mark, we went on a hike together. Or when I first met him in person, we went on a hike together, and I already knew he had already attached to do the project, and it was like a month before. And he went up to a tree and he touched the tree. He's like, this tree has a lot of memories. And I just in that moment knew it was going to be so fun to direct him, because what Lili said, he has no ego. He's extremely spiritual, and we all are. Like Lili and I, before a year before we started shooting, went to this healing journey in Mount Shasta, and we're, what's the word? Very what's the word? witchy.
We saw a healer. It wasn't witchy.
Not witchy, but the woo-woo, people call it.
Sure, you could
But-
say it's woo-woo. It's like sound healing.
Yeah.
I had worked with a healer for a few years, and we were both going through heartache. And I asked Cooper. I did not think he would say yes. I was like, "You want to come to Mount Shasta with me?" And he said, "I'll meet you there." So we went on a little trip together. Yeah.
But we're all, like, when we first all got together, we were like, we were in a past life together. We must have been. And it was just, I feel like Mark immediately gave me the permission to direct the best actor alive. Like, there was no ego. There was just, like, all of us trying to be in service of this family. And no one was in charge or no one was in control. We were just trying to listen to what...
I mean, how much input does he both need and want?
He really likes to have 5 minutes before we start rolling where he's just able to like settle into it. And I like to give every actor that 5 minutes where it's like you're not talking, and then all right, here we go. It's like 5 minutes of settling in, and then I always would. With everyone, I always let he do 2 takes without talking, and then the third take, I don't know. I try to come over and just like get it more settled into a certain part of your body, but there's never like I'm not giving what you would think of as like notes to anyone, not just Mark. Mark wanted notes, and I think that there are certain actors who are like, just tell me if I'm doing it right, and it's important to push them not to have those answers and just let them explore. And I think he ultimately liked that.
In the scene, he says at the end of it, and it's also the big line in the trailer is, there are other things besides family. One of the central tensions of the show is Hal and Harper's difficulty sort of letting go of the relationship that they've been forced to have since childhood and build separate lives for themselves. What about that conflict interests you?
Everything about it interests me. I think I'm really interested in like a relationship that has so much shared pain and shared understanding without having to talk about it. They can't talk about it, but they know that they know it. And I think every stranger has so much in common in life, and I think that these two siblings are the extreme of what I think we all have with each other, and it's a really easy way to like highlight these things that we share, and I think what's like most interesting to me about Dad saying there's more to life than family is like he's the last person on earth who's taking that advice. He's so stuck in his failure as a dad with Hal Harper, and I think he's saying it to himself just as much as he's saying it to Harper, and I think he also knows that he's never going to be able to hear that in a tragic way, but he's desperately hoping. And I think all the emotions, and I talked to Mark about this, is like how the emotional part of that scene is that he's just hoping that Harper can get out from that. And I don't think he knows how. He just knows that there is more to life than family. There's more to life than survival. It's not just about protecting your family and protecting yourself from pain or trauma or whatever. It's about using it as I don't know. I could talk on and on, but yeah.
You're doing great. Do either of you have a favorite scene from the show?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I really like a scene, I think, is it in the finale, the tire scene? Yeah. Where you see sort of the emotional climax of young Hal and young Harper's relationship, because there is the 2 timelines and they both have this catharsis in both, but at separate times. And the young Hal and young Harper one is just a very sweet, touching sibling moment, and we shot that on week 1, which was kind of an crazy thing to do, given that it was really like rounding out the whole story and the journey of these two siblings. But it was basically, what should I say about it? I don't want to spoil anything.
I mean, they already know that you get bangs, so I think.
No, I
think they
know,
play pretty
I
much
know
in
that.
advance.
It's just sort of like Harper says, it's the older sibling saying to the younger sibling what every younger sibling wants to hear ever, which is that, like, I'm going to be here in your life with you forever, and I'm never going to leave your side. And if you're here forever and you're stuck here, I'll be here too. And I think it's something that the older versions of themselves have such a hard time saying. They love each other so much, but they're so chaotic. They can't be straightforward with one another. I mean, they can yell at each other in the clip that you saw, but it's kind of like a lot of projecting at one another. But that scene, that is what I'm referring to, is just a very deeply honest, coming from the heart moment between two siblings. And I think it's really cathartic for both of them.
It's one of my favorite scenes too, and it's the scene where it's what allows them to get unstuck. It's the offering of this unconditional love and knowing, and really, yeah, being honest about, like, if you really are stuck here forever, I will never leave your side. And it's ultimately what helps him move on and get away from that, get unstuck from the tire. And it's devastating because you know that they won't stay there forever, and even though it sounds really nice, they got to move on, and they got to do what's best for them and grow.
Were there any stylistic touchstones you were looking towards in terms of how you wanted this to look, to feel, how you wanted to convey the passage of time, which is a big deal in this show, sort of as we're moving back and forth between the different eras?
Yeah, Doug Emmett, the DP, and I watched a lot of things before the show, and that was awesome. What was that? Oh, cool. Cards?
Yep.
Right on.
They'll come in a bit. Don't worry. We'll get to them.
We watched a bunch of movies and shows, and when we watched this movie called Fish Tank. Any Fish Tank fans? And we just decided the show's going to be handheld, and the exception to the rule is what are the moments that do feel stable enough to be locked off. And so the whole show really is handheld. I think actually that scene on the couch is not handheld because it is one of those moments that we needed the stability to understand the clarity that they're feeling, that Dad's feeling. But yeah, stylistically, really wanted it to feel very immersive and not like the normal indie, I feel like a fly on a wall. We wanted to be super, super close to each character at all times, and in a frustrating way almost. Like, a lot of people watching were like, can we get some wides up in there? And I was like, fuck no. Because it's so insular with them, and yeah.
All right, so you guys, first of all, great job with questions. These things do not always get good audience questions, so hopefully we can get to all of these. Cooper, how do you know that you're the best person to tell any given story? This is something that I struggle with. Mia.
Don't ask yourself that. I think you know when you know, but I hear that you don't know. Let me really think about that. I wish I could know the idea that you're talking about. Are you in the audience? Are you raising your hand? I can't really see. What's your idea? I'll tell you if it's yours.
I'm doing more documentary work, so the question gets more complicated.
Yeah, no. Okay, so I guess that was gonna be my answer, was that's how I feel about, not that I've made two movies that don't feel like this at all, but with Hal and Harper and Dad, I feel so passionate about this family, and I feel so like I'll be damned if someone else tells their story, and I think that is what drove me every day to like get them in front of an audience in this very specific way. And you have to be self-assured to make something the right way. And if you're questioning anything, it's wrong. And I think you can't question it. And if it falls off for a reason. Like I've had so many things that I try to make for years, and then it falls off, and I know that there's a reason why it's falling off. With Hal Harper and Dad, like I just knew that they were never gonna fall off, and they never did for like 10 fucking years.
All right, so Jay, who's watching the live stream, says the dynamic between Hal and Harper is so layered and real. Huge props to you both. Lili, this role feels like a meaningful evolution in your work. Was there a moment while filming where you felt especially seen or proud of yourself?
Yes, I think there is a very daunting scene in the finale episode that really was hanging over my head. And like when I got the schedule, it was the scene that I looked for to see when we were shooting that, because it's just a very large emotional scene. And there's a lot of those in this, but this was the biggest one. And I think as an actor, anytime it's written that you're sobbing, it's just intimidating because you have to be in the right frame of mind to be able to do that. And I felt really proud of being able to get there when we did it. We did it, what, twice? But I think it was, I mean, Mark was with me and you were obviously behind the camera, but I had felt so connected to this woman and this character, and I loved her so deeply that it came actually really easily. And sometimes it doesn't with other projects that I just maybe don't feel as connected to. So I was just really lucky that I was able to get where we wanted. But as far as a brother-sister dynamic, was there a question involved with that, or just they were just shouting it out? Okay,
Dave,
nice.
just
Thanks.
praising you. I could have cut to the question, but I figured,
Sure.
you know,
He did the props.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, people like to be complimented. All right, this one is for Cooper. Out of directing, acting, writing, and producing, which one do you find the most difficult, and which do you enjoy the most?
The most difficult is producing. I don't know what producing is still. I can't even answer it with, I don't know what it is. Someone tell me what it is. And then the one I enjoy the most, is that second?
Yes.
I really enjoy directing, and I really enjoy working with actors, and yeah.
I mean, have you, like, was there a chance that you might not have played Hal, or is that something you're interested
No,
in doing?
I needed to play Hal.
Yeah.
I've promised all of my loved ones that I'll never direct and act in anything ever again simultaneously, because it just is so hard on my body and on my relationships. And but I needed to play Hal because I don't know. He's fearful of the world in the same way that I am. And I know that he's a real person and not just like a caricature of this annoying little brother. And I really wanted to act as Hal.
All right, so this one is for Lili, from Benji. He says, I'm obsessed with the idea of being near to your emotions as an actor. You seem to have an incredible wealth of emotion and connection. Is this something you think about or have conceptualized? He would just love to hear more about your process.
These are great questions.
I think some actors can really cry on command or cry at the drop of a hat, and I can't do that. But I feel actually lucky that I can't do that, because subconsciously I think I would feel that I was phoning it in. So I absolutely pull from my real experiences and my real trauma and sadness. But in a way, it's sort of that then makes it cathartic. And I, as an audience member, when I'm watching movies or television and I'm seeing an actor cry, I think to myself, is that really like what they look like when they're crying? I'm just like so curious if that's how they act when they're sad. And I think I can confidently say, when you're watching me cry or be frustrated or scream, it's just, that's how it would be in real life. I really just think my emotions I put all of them into my character, which is why oftentimes I feel like the characters still live in me, or I have deep empathy or compassion for them, because there's a lot of myself in there. It's my own emotion in there, which can sometimes make it a bit hard to watch. But ultimately, I get to sort of, I think crying is a good thing, and it feels cathartic. So at the end of the day, if I have an emotional scene and I'm able to really get there, whatever I'm using to, which oftentimes is music, or just memories or thoughts that get me to that place emotionally, I can walk away feeling like I can kind of like breathe a sigh of relief that I was able to use pain that I have to make art. I think I actually feel really safe and comfortable when there's a camera this close to my face. I almost feel like it's an invitation to be emotional, because I might as well put it to good use and like make artwork out of it that someone could relate to or emotionally connect with. So I think like working with the camera and doing film and television is so important to me, because it really does give me permission to feel my feelings. It's sort of like therapy in a way.
Something that I really liked about that question, and that I think is really, like, I can't think of another person like Lili in this way, is her emotions are, if you think of like emotions as this fire, I'm someone, and I think crying, or I'm like, and I think Hal is someone who emotions are like, there's the fire and I don't want to get close to it, but if I'm gonna feel it, okay, I'm gonna jump in, and you like are burning alive, and it's like awful, and it's just like, oh my God, this person's scream crying. But with Lili, what draws me in so much, and what I think carries the whole show, is you see her going through all of these feelings in a way that's like, here's the fire, and she's just sitting there, and it's very near, and she's feeling them, and it's different, and there's a lot of layers, and there, every once in a while you see her kind of dip out, and she goes outside and she gets cold, and you see that, and then you see her come back and sit by the fire and go through these feelings. That's how I feel it, and that's what that question made me think of. Like, watching her, I see her feeling all the different things, and that's why it's just so endless. She's so endlessly watchable for that reason.
All right, we're running out of time, but we've got one more process question. This is for you, Cooper. What is your writing process? Like, do you have a map timeline? Or are you just sort of free writing? How does it work?
My writing process is nothing. I don't have a writing process. I just try to write when I feel like writing. Thank you.
All right, okay. So then last one for me then. For either of you, is there something you want the audience to take out of watching the 8 episodes of Hal Harper?
It's your show.
I want people to find a similar sense of healing that the family finds, that I found with them while being with them for so long. And I think that I just realized I never got to say my favorite scene. My favorite scene is the scene with you and Audrey in the finale, when she's talking about there's a big decision that Lili has to make, and it's about kind of, she's having a hard time making this decision, and Audrey tells her, no one's gonna die if you make this decision. And she says, look at us, we're still breathing. And I think that gift is the gift that Harper needed, and I think her making this decision is the gift that Hal and Dad needed. And I think that they're, by the end of the show, are on these very distinct paths that are separate from one another, and it's devastating, but it's what they need, and it's how to heal. And I hope that people watching the show find a similar sense of that.
Do you think if time travel existed and you were able to take this show that you've made, this beautiful show, and show it to your college self who was trying to make the funny online skits, what do you think he would think of it? The boring answer is he'd be a blubbering mess, and he'd be crying and be like, oh my God. But
the funny answer is like, be like, dude, what? This is supposed to be a funny web series, dude. Yeah, I think I always like I feel like I've always been taking steps to tell their story, and that was just the first step.
All right, well, I think that's a good note to end on. Everyone, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much,
Cooper,
guys, for
Lili,
coming.
thank you.